Summer interviews on campus and off. That is the topic of today's video. My name is Craig Meister. I'm a college admissions coach. You can learn more about me and how you can work with me one-on-one throughout the entire college admissions process on my website, which is collegemeister.com. And if you're interested in learning about whether or not you are or your student is on track for selective college admission in the United States of America, I encourage you to go over to areyouontracktogetin.com. Again, that's areyouontracktogetin.com. You'll complete a free 3-minute online assessment on that website. Your results will be emailed to you right away, and they will help you clarify whether or not you are or your student is on track for selective college admission in the United States of America. So I talk occasionally in these videos about interviews. I'm traditionally a real big fan of the opportunity to interview as part of your college admissions process. I think it's a wonderful way to put a face to the name or face to the scores or a face to the transcript, and also engage with a representative of the university or college, whether it be an alumnus or a student volunteer or an actual employee of an admissions office. But as you may know, if you've watched my previous videos in recent months, you know that currently the trends are pushing very hard against interviewing overall because of a lot of different reasons, social, political reasons in the United States, why certain colleges are pulling back from interviewing as much as they used to. There were a lot of colleges that would require an evaluative interview as a part of the process of applying to that college or university. You needed to engage in an interview and be evaluated during that interview in order to even be considered for admission. Now, these days, evaluative interviews where you are being evaluated and the performance that you produce in that interview is put into your file, they're relatively rare. The most common type of remaining interview that exists are the interviews where students have a give and take informally of information with a student representative of the school, an alumnus of the school, or an employee of an admissions office. And it's just an information gathering session. The college learns about the student a little bit, and the student learns a little bit more about the college, and that's it. And it's just a give and take of information, sort of like a touch point where you can learn more from someone who has closer experience to the college. Now, there are still some colleges out there that engage in evaluative interviews, not just informational interviews. Evaluative interviews, again, are when you are being evaluated during the interview and some sort of write-up about you will be put into your admissions file. Most interviews that are formally structured as part of the application process are interview opportunities that don't get served up to you until you've hit submit on your application. When you have applied, and basically what happens is a couple days later, you get an email from the school or a text, or in your portal for that college's application, you'll see that they're inviting you to interview with someone. It makes sense because, of course, even if the interviewer is a volunteer, like a student volunteer, there are only so many student volunteers. And so it makes sense that the vast majority of colleges would not want to spread themselves too thin by allowing representatives, whether it be an alumnus or an admissions officer for sure, or a student, to just willy-nilly interview anyone who is a rising senior, right? That would make no sense. They want to create a funnel so that only the most serious prospects are going to take up the resources, i.e. the interviewer's time. And so that's why most colleges do not actually interview unless you have already applied. And so that's why the month of October, November, well, really it's more November, but I'll say sometimes October, but it's really the prime times for interview are November for early decision and early action candidates who've applied, applicants, the people who have applied early decision and early action. November is a prime time for those colleges who do engage in formal interviews, whether they be evaluative or informational, to engage or invite applicants to interview. And then also January, and to some extent early February, for regular decision applicants. But today's video, that's a long way of saying, today's video is to talk about that there are colleges that actually start interviewing students before the students have started, let alone finished, their application for that particular admission cycle. So I'm doing this video in May 2024. And so for the current cycle, let's say you're a high school junior, you're going to graduate high school in June 2025 or May 2025. You're going to be applying to college between August and let's say January of 2024 to, again, January 2025. For you or anyone like you in the future, just change the years, you could be interviewing now at a certain number of colleges if you want to. And that's the big if you want to, and if it's a good idea for you. There are colleges out there, and I will name them in a few minutes, a couple of them at least, that engage in interviews over the summer before you've even put pen to paper, as they used to say, or fingers to keyboard on your actual application. Because the application to the vast majority of schools at the earliest opens July 1st, but the vast majority open August 1st with a common application. So the fact that there are colleges interviewing rising high school seniors now is amazing to me because, it shows a great deal of interest on the part of the college for students to engage with them. I think that's a positive thing, but don't be seduced by the idea of, this is one of the schools on my list. I might as well just interview on campus while I'm there. And that could be a really good thing. No, that could be a very bad thing if you have no idea what you're talking about and are not yet ready to engage. So I will say this, before I start sharing some colleges that engage in summer interviews, I do want you to understand that I would never recommend that you engage in an interview on campus or in your community or virtually until you really feel like you know a lot about that college or university. You don't have to know everything about the college and university, but you should know how many dorms, what majors you'd be interested in there, maybe the top 3 reasons that college should be interested in you, the top 3 reasons that college interests you. These basic parameters going in, because otherwise it could be a bad situation for you, especially if the interview is one that is added to your file, i.e. an evaluative interview. And some on the list that I'm about to share with you are actually colleges that still conduct evaluative interviews. So you never want to engage too early. It's like going into war when you're not yet ready to fight. You don't do that. You have to be ready. You have to be ready for the interview. And again, that's a very gruesome way of looking at it, but it's like you don't want to do something that you're not ready for, right? It's like competing in the Olympics. If you haven't practiced, like that makes no sense. You have to practice. It's the same idea with an interview, because especially if it's going to be put into your application file, you want to do your very best, even if it's not put into your application file officially. You don't want to have a disastrous interview, obviously, because if it's a disastrous interview and it's an admissions officer engaging in that conversation, as they now call them a lot to lower the temperature, but basically they're interviews. If it's an admissions officer interviewing you and it's that disastrous, I mean, yeah, it may not officially be put into your file, but they may remember you. So you want to still be like, have a modicum of preparation here in order to engage in a summer interview. Now, I'm going to give a hat tip here to Grand Fit Educational Consulting. They have a wonderful website and I'm going to link to it below this video, where it's like a post by the owner of Grand Fit Educational Consulting, named Allison Grandites. If I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, I apologize, but her name's Allison, and her company name is Grand Fit Educational Consulting. So hat tip to you, Allison. She has a whole list of colleges that currently are engaging in virtual or on-campus interviews, or maybe even regional interviews for rising seniors the summer before they actually start applying to college. So this is an interesting resource, and I highly recommend it. That's why I just recommended it. But on this list, which seems to be updated relatively regularly, you can find college names such as American University, Bowdoin, Carleton, Bryn Mawr, Colorado College, College, Connecticut College, Hamilton, Lafayette, Reed, Occidental, Swarthmore, Union, Trinity in Texas, William & Mary, Washington and Lee. This is a diverse group, as you can see, mainly small liberal art institutions, but also schools like University of Rochester, University of San Diego are on this list. And it's a diverse McAllister. There's other diversity of schools, and she includes what is currently known on her part by whether or not these colleges are just conducting them a certain month or a certain way. And then you can go directly to the link that I guess she found this information at on that college's website. So I think that's really cool that someone took the time to do this. I would never take the time to do this because I know how much colleges are discounting the interview process writ large these days. And I don't trust a lot of these colleges will continue to interview from year to year these days. If this was back 2006, I would probably track this myself. But Allison, she's a great sport, I guess. I don't know her again, but I will say that she's a great sport to have taken the time to do this. Because especially in a day and age when most interviews are not even called interviews anymore, as to not scare kids. They're called conversations or whatever, or chats. But even the interviews that are still called interviews are basically informational in nature, which I'm still a big fan of. I did a whole other previous video about why I say you always want to engage in an interview if you can, even if it is just informational. Treat it seriously and engage in it because it's a learning experience for you as much as it's a learning experience for whoever is interviewing you. And you want to make sure that you are finding that great fit college. And to do so, the more touch points you have with the college or university, the better. The big question is, do you want to engage in an interview the summer before you start applying? The reason I would say absolutely do it is if one of the colleges that you're interested in, or even more than one of the colleges that you're interested in and know a lot about, or at the very top of your list. Let's say maybe one of them is even your dream college. This is your first choice college and it's on this list. And you already know a heck of a lot about it. You already know you're applying ED or EA for the school, or if it doesn't offer ED or EA, you're going to be applying as soon as you can. It's going to be your first choice school. You know you're going to attend if you can, God willing, get in. Then if you're ready, by all means, I think the summer really shows demonstrated interest, even if they're not officially tracking demonstrated interest. The fact that you can step up and engage in an interview in the summer is lovely. Now, don't just rush to do it because maybe there will be a more preferable environment for interviewing later in the fall for you, because maybe the interviews that are available, let's say over the summer, are just virtual, and then maybe in the fall you'll get to engage with an alumnus in your local region and you prefer that. So you do want to read the fine print on the way in which interviews are conducted sort of early before you even start applying versus later, and which one you would prefer most. But if you like the idea of the type of interview that is on offer at a particular college high on your list, and it's available during the summer before you even start applying, and you are ready, knowledgeable about that school, and you're ready to engage in the interview in all the ways that my previous videos have talked about engaging in a particular interview, including bringing a resume and being able to talk authoritatively about why you like that school and why that school should like you, all that stuff. And again, I, of course, do strategy sessions all the time with students, just focus on interview prep. Because sometimes that's all someone wants to work with me on is interview prep, because that's the area they feel like they need the most help on. But whatever the case may be, so by all means, go to my website, collegemeister.com, if you want to do that. But even if you don't want to work with me one-on-one on interview prep, you want to be sure you're coming in ready to engage in a very positive, professional, calm, cool, and collected manner. So you don't want to rush it. But for the right type of student, in the right type of situation, a summer interview is a wonderful idea. It's also front-loading something that could be relatively stressful, or at least on your mind, into the summer when you have much more time to prepare and think about it, than rather doing it in October or November when maybe you're in the middle of, taking mid-semester tests and projects, and you'll be doing a lot of other stuff. And, it's like spreading things out, which is nice if you can do it. But again, the vast majority of colleges that still engage in some sort of interview do not interview during the summer before you've applied, because their resources are spread so thin that they're just not able or willing to do it. But I'm very happy that there is now a list that I can point you to, all of you, where you can get a sense of interviews that colleges that interview over the summer. I will just point out a couple in particular beyond the ones I listed. Again, all of them are on the link below this video. But I was particularly noting McAllister, which is a lovely school in Minnesota. McAllister is a small liberal arts college. I think Kofi Annan went there, the former deputy general or whatever of the UN. He has passed away since, unfortunately. But what I will say is McAllister is still explicit, even though they don't call it an evaluative interview. McAllister on its website indicates that not only are these interviews available to rising seniors beginning August 1st, which is later in the summer, so that's not early summer, it's later summer, but in addition to that, you will note that they say on their website at McAllister, your interview will be part of your application file. So it's an opportunity to share or address anything you'd like to include in your application. So they seem to be more offered virtually. So that's something to note as well. And some colleges, and Macalester is one of them, that says explicitly that interviews are reserved for domestic applicants and U.S. citizens / permanent residents residing overseas who are rising seniors or seniors. So that means that all of China and all of India cannot interview. And again, that's not to be discriminatory, I'm assuming. That's probably simply because all of China and all of India and other countries would want to interview if possible, and the resources are simply not there at a small school like Macalester. So that's why they limit it to particular individuals. And they also make note of the fact that, it's not going to hurt you if you don't interview on most of these websites. So don't be scared if you can't interview for whatever reason. Another college that interviews is Brandeis. And Brandeis also says on their website, whether you sit, they're a little more cagey about the language. Whether you sit down with an admissions office staff or a student admissions fellow, interviews are an opportunity to tell your story in a way that an essay or transcript can't. Interviews are also a chance to get in-depth answers to your questions about Brandeis. And while interviews may not be required, which is interesting to say, they may not be required. I don't know if that means that maybe sometimes they require it at request, and while interviews may not be required, they can be an important element of your Brandeis application. Available only to rising or current high school seniors, interviews become a part of your application, giving us another way to get to know you. Notice again how the word evaluative has been stripped from the lexicon. This is not surprising. Again, in a world in which Penn, they now call them conversations, a world in which Watch U got rid of interviews altogether. Now they just have little informal bear chats. The pendulum has swung in a way where even the word evaluative is apparently too domineering in this environment. So it's now two schools we've read, Brandeis and of course Macalester. They're basically saying, interviews become a part of your application, which basically is implicitly telling you that evaluative. This is an evaluative interview. How you perform in the interview will be evaluated and ultimately considered as part of your application. And then finally, another one I just wanted to point out is Washington and Lee, a school I love. I've always loved Washington and Lee. And you may say, why, Craig, do you love Washington and Lee? I love Washington and Lee because almost every student I've ever met who's currently a student there or who has graduated and representing Washington and Lee, I've just been really impressed by. I've just been extremely impressed by them and their overall demeanor, disposition, communication skills. Something about them really rubs me the right way. So I'm very impressed by Washington and Lee. Male, female, young, old. Washington and Lee has always been one of my favorites. But on Washington and Lee's website, interviews are stated to be not required, but strongly recommended. And they are very transparent about the fact that they offer on-campus interviews, virtual interviews, alumni interviews, and also you have different sort of time frames of when they're available. The on-campus interviews are available May 1st of your junior year through November 30th of your senior year. Virtual interviews are also that same time frame. And alumni interviews are only October 1 of senior year through January 31st. Again, that aligns perfectly with the calendar I sort of explained earlier. And Washington Lee also offers international applicant interviews as well. That looks like it's conducted through sort of an outsourced Duolingo, Vericant, or Initial View. But the other ones are conducted by actually alumni or other staff members or a trained student on campus or virtually. So I love how Washington Lee is so good at communicating. And so props to you. Again, no one in Washington and Lee's admissions office has paid me off. I don't know anyone in their admissions office, but I am very happy to say that Washington Lee is so transparent about the way in which interviews work. But also note, you're not going to get to interview multiple ways. You got to pick the way that works best for you. You may only complete one type of interview. That's usually the case at all of these schools, but Washington and Lee makes it abundantly clear, especially in the context of them offering you basically 4 different types of options depending on your current domicile and so forth. So only pick one. You can only do one, and you time it out at the time that's right for you. So there you go. We learned a lot today. Summer interviews are a thing. They're not so common, but they're relatively common in the small college space, the small liberal arts institution space. Though, in the case, like I said, of a Washington and Lee, a Syracuse, these are schools that are officially universities. They're not just liberal arts colleges. They also have pre-professional majors and are actually officially, universities because of the way in which they are structured. So it's not just small liberal arts colleges. It's also some medium to larger size universities, but rarely does it get too large. Syracuse may be one of the biggest that actually interviews. The vast majority are in the 4 digits, as opposed to the 5 digit zone that Syracuse would be in terms of undergraduate student population. All right, so I hope you enjoyed today's video about summer interviews. Thank you again to Allison and Grand Fit, what is that name? College Consulting or Educational, Grand Fit Educational Consulting. Again, I don't know you, Allison, but good job. I'm going to give you a link again below this video. Go to her or get that website for really that amazing resource. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and also consider subscribing to my channel. If you are interested in working with me one-on-one throughout, or even for just part of the college admissions process, go to my website, collegemeister.com, to learn more. And finally, the most important part of the video is the end, when I say, and this is so important, stay safe, stay well, and stay stress-free throughout the entire college admissions process.